yeah, it's done. Ronna and Roulier are going to decide who is European champion. And they both massively blew up. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social Podcast. Today we'll be discussing the first day of the European Championships on the Col du Vam, and I'm joined by Issam.
Hey everybody.
And Twan.
Hello.
The first day we had 3 races and I was actually there, so I maybe have missed a few details, but Twan certainly hasn't missed a detail in the women's race.
It was a very strong start from Capablanca Vash, as she would have a bunch of Dutch women on her wheel, and that would pretty much remain the same throughout the race. But in the second lap, she went into the pits, and the world champion Lucinda Brand powered away, and they would never see her again. Kastelijn and Alvarado would be sitting on the wheel of Vash, probably out of not really being able to help her out at all, but also with a very convenient excuse of having Lucinda Brand ahead. And Brand would go on to claim her European title, and it would be Vash that would end up dropping both the Dutch women, and Kastelijn would come in third place.
Well, Lucinda Brand certainly storming to the victory here. Would you guys think that this is the Lucinda Brand that we've basically missed ever since Fayetteville, probably, when she after that had a cold? Is this the Lucinda Brand that we saw in Gieten and throughout last season again?
I definitely think that this is a Lucinda that we have missed for some time now. It was just in general it looked way better. It looked like it was going a little bit smoother as well. There was some power behind it. And those were just things that I was missing in the last, especially in the last week as well. But yeah, you start to wonder if there was maybe not a little bit of laying back in the couple last races, that she knew that, on the European Championships, I want to be good, I want to perform. But definitely today was definitely a very strong day from her.
It was, of course, a parcours that suits her quite well. A lot of power needed today, but throughout the season, indeed, we have been kind of missing that Lucinda Brand, and a great peak toward the European Championships and a very comfortable display of power.
Yeah, this definitely looked like a very, very strong Lucinda Brand. And the parcours itself, it was, in a way, it's a bit weird. Like, the part on the top, it's not that difficult. You have a big climb in it, but even the climb itself didn't create huge gaps, especially in the under 23 men's race, which we'll talk about later, because it was a lot on tarmac. So it was in a way kind of hard to break a gap, but when you eventually created a gap, you could see the difference in power. So in a way, it was more a parcours that suited a peloton cross. So I think Brand made a very wise decision by attacking early when Vash went into the pits, and she steamed through that muddy section, because I think if she hadn't been able to make that move there, it could have been a completely different race, more the race that we were expecting, because it's fair to say that we expected a way more exciting race than this. And well, nothing against Brand, of course, she was the strongest today and she showed it when she finally broke away, but I just mean to say that if it hadn't had happened there, we could have had a completely different race, because it's pretty hard to open a gap on this parcours.
Yeah, that is true, and Vash, of course, also very capable, really drag that chase along, and by the end, of course, there's quite a bit of a time gap, which still leads me to believe that eventually Lucinda Brand would just drop her somewhere, but it would have been a lot closer and a lot more of an interesting race. Lucinda Brand just capitalizing on one of very few clear points to make a gap.
Yeah, I definitely agree. She was by far the strongest today, and she would have won regardless. Vash ending second here. I think she can be very happy with that result. She wasn't after the finish, but I mean, she still fought off an armada of Dutch women for that second place. So, in my opinion, she can be satisfied. How do you guys see that?
I think it's good to see that. Her instant reaction is just, it's disappointing that you get a second place when you came here for the title. But I think it's just a very good placing for her. And when Brand is back on her fitness like this, She is just that much better than her still. So I think she should be very proud of what she was able to achieve today.
Nothing wrong with a little bit of winner mentality, right? I think she thought that when she went in this race, she could have won. I think one of her weak points was her running, and today it was shown again. And I think she should be lucky that she's actually second and not maybe outside of a podium, because obviously, like you said, there were a lot of Dutch women that were there, and it could have been a totally different race, and then you might end up outside the podium. So I think for her personally, she should be very proud with the second place. But I would understand that Vas, with the expectations that she had before the race, that she thought that she was able to win, and obviously with the previous results, it was quite clear that she was one of the main favorites, and I understand the disappointment for sure.
Yeah, I can understand the disappointment after the race, and indeed nothing wrong with a winner mentality. It's what you need if you want to be the best of the best, and that's what she wants. But on the other hand, there was a lot of pressure put on her after that win in Overijse. After Overijse, she was all of a sudden the wonder kid, whilst before that she didn't get that stamp, whilst we already knew what she was capable of. She had a lot of big interviews come out this weekend. I think there was her first ever press session on Tuesday. And then coming here, racing with the elites, not the under 23, I think it built a lot of pressure. I think Vas last weekend was a bit better. Not enough better that she would have been able to compete with Brand, but I can imagine that played a factor. But yeah, I think she can be happy, and what I saw, at least from where I was standing, I saw that she was actually fully sending it through the downhills, and she was not necessarily taking more risk, but had more courage in the downhill than especially Kastelijn, which isn't surprising because it's Kastelijn and she doesn't really have the confidence in downhill still. But yeah, I could see that Vas then indeed was lacking a bit on the running parts and also a bit on the steep tarmac part of the Vamberg, which then was a bit weird to see. And that's also why I think, as I said, that Vas was just a tad weaker than she was last week in Overijse and Koppenberg. But nevertheless, a very good performance. And I can say the same about Kastelijn. Despite having that confidence issue in the downhill, she was still strong enough to secure bronze here, which is, in my opinion, very good.
Yeah, Kastelijn this week, Monday was the Koppenberg, of course, showing that she still has it on the real power courses where technique isn't quite as relevant, and that is good to see. Because she had a whole run of 9th places, which isn't exactly where she would want to be after 2 years ago already winning so many races and competing so much for all those.
Yeah, definitely. I think Kastelijn is one of the riders that will leave here with a satisfied feeling. I spoke with her mechanic after the race. He told me that Kastelijn was very happy with the result, and I can imagine that. I waited a bit for Kastelijn, but they told me she was taking a shower, so I didn't speak to her after the race. But I'll just go off what her mechanic told me, that she was satisfied. So yeah, I can imagine that, because as Twan said, she came off some pretty, disappointing results, and this is definitely a bounce back. And I guess we can say the same for Alvarado, who ended 4th. She, of course, had that problem this summer, not a great showing last weekend in Overijse and Koppenberg, to say the least. 4th here could well have been a podium if she didn't crash that last lap, in my opinion.
I think that Alvarado should be satisfied with this. I mean, she came off a little bit difficult period, missing obviously a bunch of races, and coming back and getting 4th position is obviously not really bad. It was also a strong race from her. She was able to have a sight on the podium for a while, but eventually it was just not there. And I think 4th place is always not really the position you want to be in, because you're like the first that is not able to be on the podium. But nevertheless, it's a good performance.
Not only good performances today, let's run down our entire top 10. We had, of course, the top 4, which we just discussed. Brand taking the victory ahead of Capablanca Vas, and then Yara Kastelijn and Celine Del Carmen Alvarado. 5th place for Denise Betsema, ahead of Helene Clauzel. 7th Annemarie Worst, 8th Arzoufi, 9th Persico, and 10th Sanne Kant. Well, disappointing performance here today, certainly for Denise Betsema in 5th place. She came here as the top favorite based on her season. She only missed the podium in Overijse, and then to end 5th here is pretty disappointing, especially considering she came here for the win, and then ending 5th, like, it's a disappointment. What went wrong for her today, Twan?
Just a bad day, I would guess, and apparently she crashed as well off camera, so I must assume that that was already when she was dropped. Yeah, it's very unfortunate for her. It's another championship where she doesn't take home the jersey when there was certainly an opportunity, you'd think.
Yeah, I saw that picture of that crash as well on her Instagram. It looked like a nasty crash. It looked in like a weird place to crash, somewhere at the bottom outside of the sights of the camera. I see a rider in front, but I do not really know if she was dropped or whatever, but definitely not great for her. But I think like the rest as well, not a great day for her, and perhaps that's caused by the pressure because that's often the case. But overall, a day to forget for Betsema, but I guess she'll be back next week because it's Betsema. Her form doesn't just disappear, and her form, despite lacking a bit today, has been looking alright over the season. And I mean, the same can't be said for Annemarie Worst. Annemarie Worst is experiencing another kind of disappointing season so far, just like last year. And today, I mean, we can end our speculation. Like last week, there was still the story that the Koppenberg was going to be in function of the European Championships. I don't buy that anymore. You don't end, if you peak here, a peak Annemarie Worst doesn't end 7th at the European Championships, in my opinion.
Yeah, at some point you just have to accept that the level that you hoped would be there, it's just not there. And I think that is the case for Annemarie Worst. On a good day, she can challenge toward the top 5 and on courses that suit her, but clearly that isn't every day anymore like 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, and Issam, do you think that it's maybe just her base condition that is lacking? Because we see it quite often that in the first 1 or 2 laps she's up there and then just fades.
Well, yeah, that can obviously be the suggestion. Obviously, she had an okay day in Ruddervoorde, but it's up and down with her results so far. It's hard to say, and it's still, I think, in my opinion, it's still a little bit too early to conclude that her season is not going to be any good, or at least the season so far is very bad. But there are definitely still a lot of races to go. A busy period is coming, and it can really turn. It's not that hard to have a very good weekend and get some good results out. So I don't count her out at all for this season. But obviously time is ticking, and our time is at the moment her enemy. And at this moment, the goals are shrinking. There are not a lot of classifications she can now focus on, or at least try to actually have a very good result in. So she will probably focus now a little bit more on individual results, and then probably as well the national championships and the world championships, obviously in January.
The podcast today shouldn't turn into a 1-hour episode, but there's still a couple of riders I need to mention in the top 10. Persico ending 9th here, solid result by her, kinda around where I expected her. That leaves us with Clausel and Arzoufi, who are kinda names that we need to mention. Twan, what did you think about the race of Clausel today?
It looks very good. It would be a bit more suited probably for her if it had been more like the U23 men, where it stuck together a bit longer, but unfortunately it didn't. But getting a very good result.
And Issam, what did you think about the race of Arzoufi?
I think she had some issues in the race. I think she crashed at a certain point or something, but 8th place is not really a surprise in a way, but it's definitely a good result, just in front of her country and also teammate Persico. So I think overall, definitely both Italians were on point in the results and delivered like I expected them to deliver, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Arzoufi could have gotten an even better result here. She took a tumble twice. One time it definitely wasn't her fault, I think. Yeah, the one time it wasn't her fault. The other time I think she made a mistake. But still, I think without that crashes, or especially that second one, she could have maybe even challenged for... she could probably have been a minute up the road. So she could have challenged for 5th, which would have been really good. because don't underestimate on this parcours the difference that it makes if you ride in a group or not, because as said, the parcours wasn't the hardest, and you really had a pretty solid slipstream effect, especially considering the headwind up the Vamberg. So yeah, I think Arjufi very unfortunate, but still 8th place, not bad. Well, we also had 2 other races, the men's under 23 race and the women juniors race. The men's under 23 race first. We had a cracking lap and a half at the end of the race, and actually the entire race was pretty interesting, wasn't it, guys?
It was quite a tactical race, which was enjoyable to see again, and like a lot of riders just very closely matched, and it kept bunching up because it is quite hard to drop people, and it made for some very interesting viewing.
Ryan Kamp eventually took the win in that race, but it came at quite a cost. He was dropped inside the final lap. Even within the final 500 meters, he was still behind Van der Putte and Nys. But first of all, Ryan Kamp taking the win here. I mean, Twan, you did predict it, but still, it's good for Ryan Kamp at least that he finally gets things together. We know the talent is there, but his season has been up and down. So, in a way, it's completely not a surprise that he wins, but in another way, it is kind of a surprise considering his results this season.
We do know he has the quality to be able to do this sort of thing, right? And it just hasn't quite been there this season, but this is a result that shows that it is there. Although in the race he might have struggled a little bit, but I think by being dropped he put himself in the perfect position for the finish.
Yeah, I don't think Ryan Kamp was the strongest today. I was, even inside the final lap, still backing Thibaut Nys for the win. But as you said, Kamp was dropped, he was slightly behind. And there was this small dip. I don't know how much you could see it on the TV, but there was a small downhill on the tarmac before the cobbles. Van der Putte let the pace drop and Nys was waiting. Nys should have gone on that moment, because now he let Ryan Kamp come back with overspeed from behind, carrying all the momentum that he had from closing the gap. Well, from there on, there was nothing that Van der Putte or Nys could do, because they needed to accelerate from a couple of kilometers per hour slower than Kamp was already going. So, yeah, Kamp just took a head start there, and I mean, I think Nys should have gone, and Van der Putte gave it his all in attacking. Nys eventually came back, but if Nys would have launched there, he even said it himself in an interview, I don't know why he didn't launch there. If Nys would have launched there, I think he would have been European champion.
It's just not a place where you can drop the pace. Like, you can do it like at the top of the hill, but the moment you go down, you have to just at least put on like a pace from where you can easily accelerate to full sprint. Like, you need to carry some momentum down there, and Niels van der Putte just dropping the pace at the wrong time, and Thibaut Nys just probably following a bit too much, because like he has gone quite deep as well, of course. But yeah, Ryan Kamp perfectly doing it, going with the momentum, with the flow, closing the gap, and instantly going over it.
Yeah, to come back on that moment that Nys closes the gap, I've seen people who think that Nys shouldn't have done that because he should have let Van der Putte win. Personally, I disagree with that. Issam, do you feel like Belgium should have played team tactics in this race?
Yes. I think that Belgium threw away European Championship, and I think in a way, obviously, I can understand Nys. You know, he comes back from an injury. He was very good in the Koppenberg, and he obviously is, he was in very good shape. And I think Van der Putte was also very good, but I think tactically they just kind of failed. I mean, they were in the overhand, they had the majority, and definitely in a race where tactics could have been played, they were not played at all. And I think I think that the head of the Belgium cyclocross team, which is Sven van Toerenhout, I think he was pretty disappointed. And I think that when they're going to the World Championships, that there will be rules set up and there will be tactics made to make sure that there will be a Belgian winner, not a Dutch or another nation that's going to win the World Championships.
I would have agreed, but only if it was like an elite race. This is an under 23 race. I don't feel like any national federation should be necessarily targeting a win by imposing team tactics here. And also, I don't feel like a nation or a team should be imposing tactics here. These guys get like 15 races a season where they can race against their people their age. And their career depends on those races and mainly on this European and World Championship later this year. If you don't get your results in here, maybe if you have a very good World Cup, you can still secure yourself of a contract. But if you're going to be basically giving away your chances for someone else, it could seriously affect your career. And at the end, it's only an under-23 title. Sure, it's nice to have, but I don't feel like Belgium should be disappointed. I mean, look at the strength of their squad. They are with 6 riders or even seven riders in the top 10. They were at some point with their entire team in the front group of 16 riders. So the quality is there, but I don't feel like they should have been working for each other. That is something that can happen in the elite race because that's what actually counts. This is just a youth category, which is, in my opinion, a chance for these riders to show how good they are.
And keep in mind that all 3 of the guys that went into the final lap, they all ride for different teams. So like usually they are competing against each other, and I think it's just something like everyone is just riding for that win because it's like one of the first times even since they came out of the junior category that they're racing for wins again. So like it's everyone wants it so much that I don't think anyone is really even like slightly willing to play the team card.
But do you think that they're gonna be that at the World Championships they're gonna play the same tactics all over again, and they're gonna be having an open race? Or you think when they're going to Fayetteville, obviously tactics is not really, something that you are able to really play, but definitely there is some place for it.
There's always place for tactics because last year we saw the Under-23 World Championships, and those were in Ostend, and I think it was Kielig with Van der Bos, and Van der Bos was not allowed to chase because Ronhaar, who then still rode for Pauwelshuis, and Kamp were ahead. And yes, there was always space for tactics, but I think like as a national coach for the junior and Under-23 races, you shouldn't be saying, okay, this or this is happening, especially in cyclocross. Like for the road, there's a bit more of a team aspect, but I think it's always a bit of a mess. It's always like, personal interest, national team interest, or my private team interest. It's hard, and I certainly don't blame these riders for racing for their own opportunity because, as I said, these riders need to prove themselves for the future of their career. Nijs maybe not as much. Van der Putten maybe not as much as well, but still, I understand that you want that title, and I don't blame them, as I said, but yeah, perhaps when we come in Fayetteville, they will pull out the team tactic, but I don't think that, like, how are you going to tell Van der Putten, yeah, you are working for Nijs? Or how are you going to tell a Verstringen you're going to work for Nijs? Because Verstringen, I haven't mentioned him until now, but in my opinion, Verstringen could have won this race as well without that crash in the last lap.
Can I also just say, for like the team tactics, I think for team tactics, I think they will, like, as the national team coach, he should be pushing for team tactics, like kind of like that Isby does with Van Toornhout and Sveek, where he, like, they don't necessarily, like, they play for him, but that's not the one that I'm talking about. When he does it for them, which is basically just when it's convenient for him, he gets to sit on Toon Aerts, Quint and Hermans for a bit when Van Toornhout and Sveek happen to be up the road, and just wait a little bit until they get back into the field, into a technical section, for example, where he can take over and close the gap himself whilst trying to drop the other guy that he was sitting on.
Yeah, I think it's definitely complicated. I don't know. I saw Sven Van Toornhout after the race. He didn't look happy, but there were plenty of people who didn't look happy. Nijs wasn't happy because how he launched the sprint. Van der Putten wasn't happy because he wanted the title. Verstringen wasn't happy because he crashed. Wiesure was happy because he got fourth, which is a solid performance. But then again, Cameron Mason wasn't happy. Pim Ronhaar wasn't happy. So I think from the top 10, probably only Kamp and probably Michiels, maybe Fontana are happy because Pim Ronhaar, world champion, absolutely blew up. monumental blow up, going out very fast with Rouillet. Our commentator at the course was already saying, yeah, it's done. Ronna and Rouillet are going to decide who is European champion. And they both massively blew up. Cameron Mason, a bit of a weird race. All the respect to him, he looked in control, but eventually he made a couple of mistakes which caused him to waste too much energy, in my opinion, which then eventually led to a 6th place, which isn't bad, but also not what he came for.
Yeah, I feel like Mason fooled himself into believing that the Belgians would actually ride for each other. So he wanted to be at the head, and he paced too much on sections where it was too hard, I think. And he looked very good today. It just tactically it wasn't there.
Yeah, and that's also maybe not that strange. He's not really used to riding in this position. He's also maybe a bit with the pressure. He's never been the big favorite. But I think overall 6th place is not something that's necessarily a disappointing performance for Cameron, especially considering what his last season looked like, injury after injury. And before that, he also wasn't really around this level. He made some very, very good steps, which is good to see. We already saw that last year. And then ending 6th here, I think normally he would have been satisfied, but coming off such a good weekend last time out, he was a bit disappointed, which of course makes sense. We discussed it, nothing bad with a bit of winner mentality. A final mention I would like to make on the under 23 race is Joseph Blackmore, the Brit, ending in 12th. First year's under 23. Last year we didn't see him because he was still a junior. 12th place here as a first year under 23 is something you can move forward from. Only Jente Michiels ended in front of him in terms of people of his age. Let's move to the women's junior race then and talk about the country mate of Joseph Blackmore. Zoe Backstedt absolutely dominating that race and taking the win. It wasn't broadcasted, but Twan, you can't say you're surprised by this.
No, she does have the experience, she does have the power, and probably require a small miracle for Leonie Bentveld to get any closer. And Zoe Backstedt just doing what she's supposed to do.
I mean, what can I say? Zoe put on a show. I was there. She took the fastest start, opened the gap like within the first half of a lap, and we didn't even have a lot of difficulties. She opened the gap and then extended that gap and kept extending it. And we already knew, like after lap 1, for me it was already clear, okay, 1 and 2 are locked in. We had a decent battle for 3rd place. We saw Nienke Vinke eventually claiming that 3rd place, which is not entirely a surprise. She has the power. However, what I've seen today, her technique isn't really there. Something that I did see was better for Xaide van Sinai, Belgian, ending 4th. Good to see some Belgian talent coming through finally.
Yeah, definitely is very good to see. I mean, I was a bit disappointed with Backstedt because I mean 1 minute is not enough for me. I think.
Oh, stop! She was cruising today, man. Like she could have easily won by 2.5 minutes.
I'm
but
joking.
She was cruising.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
that's why
of
I'm
course,
laughing.
for sure. No, but I think no, obviously the it was a very good performance for Backstedt, but for sure it's very good to see that there is some Belgian talent coming up. Only 16, first year junior, so it's definitely something to build from. And I think there were definitely some girls that we have seen in the top 10, new names. Some I know, some I don't know, but that's definitely promising. And hopefully, one of the things that I've seen is a little bit more nationalities than only Dutch, and that is obviously good.
Yeah, I definitely agree. 3 Dutch riders in the top 10, 3 British, a French, an Italian, a Belgian, and a Swiss rider. Well, I think I do want to mention the performance of Mirik Nava here. She had, she was diagnosed with asthma last week. She needed to start on the last row. She was behind the crash and still managed to end 7th. Great recovery ride by her. It's something that I noticed in terms of pacing. I saw a couple of riders falling back, like Alma Johansson, who was in the top 10 and the 20th eventually. We saw Laura Molengraaf running in 2nd in the beginning, falling back to 12th position. And on the other hand, we had Ellen McLean-Howell, who moved forward from, I think, 17th to 9th. She overtook 3 or 4 riders in the last lap. She had quite some crashes. Her technique didn't look great, but then again, it's a juniors women race. I'm not too harsh on them. Plenty of time for them to improve. And with Mirik Nava, I saw the same. She came from almost, I think she was like 4th to last the first time I saw her come past me, and then ending 7th in the end. Very strong. Shows that there's definitely even more potential in her. And then the final name I need to mention here is the name of Libby Bell. Also a first year junior riding for our own cyclocross garden shed team. Ending 10th here. Also a solid performance by her.
I definitely think that is a very solid result. I mean, if you look at the results, the only one that was that were the first year juniors is Frederica Venturelli and Van Sine. So I think definitely a very good performance, and she's one of those girls that is definitely having some potential. She's very technical, good on the bike, and she's still young. And when you're young, there's always that potential, and I think definitely someone, a name to remember, someone to look out for, because you never know with those girls that are very technical but still are young. They can always grow into something very big.
Definitely, I like the technique I saw from her. Just like I liked, she was fighting with Hanna Kova, also a first year from the Czech Republic, who ended 11th. They were together for almost the entire race. It was certainly good to see that both have great technical abilities, so I was happy in seeing that, and it's definitely some talent that we can look out to the future, and we can already start next week when we have the World Cup for junior women in Tabor. To end this episode, I'm going to give you the results of some other races today. There was a C1 cyclocross race in Spain in Lolido, and the men's race was won by Lander Lokes from the Hens Maas team ahead of David van der Poel and Kevin Suarez Fernandez. The women's race was won by Anne Morichon ahead of Nuno Palacia and Alessia Bulleri from Italy. I haven't seen that name actually. We also had a race in Northampton, the Northampton International, and the women's race was won by Ruby West ahead of Raylin Nuss and Erika Zavetta. And the men's race is actually still going on at the moment, so I can't give you those results yet. Thanks everyone for listening. Twan and Issam, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for hosting. Thank you.
We'll catch you guys tomorrow for the second day of racing at the European Championships on the Vamberg men's race, men's juniors race, and women's under 23 race on our program then. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you guys soon. Goodbye.